earlier today we heard about the rich history here at Destrehan Plantation, and today there happens to be a brand new tour. Here now to tell us all about it is historical interpreter and tour guide Diane Honoré.
Welcome to Destrehan. This is actually the butler's pantry where we are standing today. So once everything was cooked out in the main kitchen, which was kept away from the house in case of fires, it was actually brought here into this room. And I also like to call this the culmination of our foodways here in Louisiana. Of course, you know there were thousands of Native Americans and several different tribes in Louisiana before we were founded by the French in 1718. Of course, they brought with them things like the bay leaf and the filet, which we're very well known for today. And then you had the Germans that came in the 1720s, and they actually settled here, of course, along the German coast. They were very hardy farmers. They were known for saving Louisiana from starvation at several different points early on. You also had, between 1719 and 1731, over 6,000 enslaved Africans that were brought in. The point to remember there is that 4,000 of them were from the same region in Africa, from Senegal, and they were able to pass on their foodways, of course, music, spirituality, which we'll get more into later on in the tour. You also, of course, had the French that brought their foodways, like the roux, which we use in just about everything that we cook today. That's fat cooked in flour. But mostly you had the French and African that mixed to create things like gumbo. You had the okra that were brought in with the enslaved Africans, and that is the basis for most of our gumbos, still here 300 years later in Louisiana. So now we're going to move on and meet a wonderful lady who was once enslaved here. Her name was Marguerite. We're going to move on to the butler's pantry. Okay, so all of the food once cooked in the kitchen was brought to the warming kitchen and then in the butler's pantry here. So one thing was that my sixth generation great-grandfather, Pompey, who worked for the Destrehan family, he was actually from the coast of Ghana, from the Elmina Castle, to be precise. He is consistently listed on inventory for the Destrehan family as being a cook or chef. So he would have worked in that capacity until he later on passed away in the late 1700s. So in this room you will see Miss Marguerite. Marguerite was born in 1740 in Louisiana, which would have made her a Louisiana Creole. She was later purchased within the Destrehan family, and she worked here until her death. Her great-great-granddaughter would later have seen her freedom after the Civil War. So for several generations, Marguerite's family was actually working hard on this plantation in particular. Now, Marguerite is also listed on inventory as having a hernia. She was a domestic, so we believe this may have come from either childbirth, or it could have come from lifting heavy pots or doing laundry. We're unsure. Back to the room, this is where everything would have been plated and served, and then brought into the dining room where the family of the owners of the plantation would have eaten for the evening. Now this would have been a dining room. And it is here that the family would have eaten, all except for the younger members of the family, which would have been served in the butler's pantry because they were too young. They didn't have the manners that were required to sit at the table with the family and eat formally. Of course, the enslaved people would not have eaten in here. They would have eaten in their own cabins in the evenings or when they had the chance. You can catch the tour Unheard Voices of the German Coast at Destrehan Plantation on Fridays and Saturdays at 10:15 a.m. and 1:15 p.m. You can check us out at destrehanplantation.org.